Good morning and welcome back to the Explicit Measures podcast with Tommy and Mike. Hello, everyone, and good morning.
Good morning, Mike. How you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you very much. Just been clipping along here. It's gotten a little bit warmer up here in our Wisconsin area, so things are starting to melt, which has been great. Going outside is less painful. You know, when you go outside and it's so cold, Tommy, and your face just like sting hurts. It's just, it's the worst. But
Dude,
things
100%.
are changing a bit around here, up in our area. Still busy though. The end of the year for me, I don't know about you, Tommy, but for me, for just work and consulting and everything it's busy. Usually December starts really ramping down and things start slowing down a bit. We've had a good healthy amount of effort put in at the end of the year. Maybe it's people getting budgets done, maybe it's people finishing up whatever they have, for the end of the year before they get to Christmas. It just feels a bit busier this year. Does that feel the same way
No,
to
I
you?
mean, honestly, I've been having a lot of conversations with new people. Some things had to be rescheduled because of the holidays, but there's
Sure.
definitely that interest. I think it's all the Fabric buzz that people are hearing about that they just want to get their hands on.
I definitely feel like there's a wind of that. I'm also hearing something too, Tommy. Anywhere I look now, or anytime I'm talking to customers, it's not necessarily just me, but it's my customers, right? So I have a client. My client has customers. It feels like everyone is clamoring for any kind of application to have AI in it. It's like it's becoming standard. There feels like a momentum here that is, I'm building things in Power BI. I'm doing a lot of Power BI embedding. I'm getting a lot of questions around how do we embed more AI things on top of the embedding space. And I really do feel like there's an accelerating need for companies to kind of figure out where does AI fit, because I feel like there's portions of organizations that are finding, hey, this is not that bad. We're able to find appropriate places to use AI, and the messaging on the internet, like my Twitter feed, is just littered with everything. Like every other day, there's another like app or dev, or I'm constantly taking notes of like all these different products that are starting to exist around AI and how it's changing workflows, how it's changing what people build, how fast people can build things. I mean, the core concepts that I feel AI is affecting here is um, it's removing grunt work out of things you do inside apps. It's adding capability and it's doing it faster than you could have done without it. It's just,
Oh
it's
yeah.
quite impressive. What are you think? Are you seeing the
No,
same thing as well?
so the biggest thing I think we're seeing with AI right now is we're beginning to see the enterprise side. Like ChatGPT just launched a marketplace for apps now. It's because, and I think there's going to be AI is going to work great when it works with other services, just like anything. Power BI's greatest accomplishment really was the ability to have the out of box connectors. So I think we're beginning to see that now. Again, the biggest part is the prep. It's really
Yeah.
like, what are you trying to do with it? And then more importantly, um, it's just going through in terms of like what problems are you needing to get solved?
This is interesting, Tommy. I didn't really understand what this apps in ChatGPT. What does this mean to you? Have you played with apps in ChatGPT? I know you're a big ChatGPT user in general, or AI user in general. What are you finding in apps? What makes it?
Yeah. Well, and when I say
What
it's
is
new,
intriguing?
I mean, it launched yesterday. So like it's
You haven't
really
figured it
new,
out
Mike.
yet. It's
No,
not
I
done.
you know what?
You haven't built an app yet.
I feel a little bad that I haven't bought everything yet on the store because that's usually what happens. And something new comes out and I buy it and I have to try it out. But no, I mean, it's just really the ability. Honestly, it's just being able to integrate with other services. And they're right now, they're very much still in the we're calling everyone to submit developers submit to our app store phase. So
Yeah.
very early in the game.
Let me
Um,
let me let me spin out some app people here that I think is very relevant to call out here. One of them has been like, so ChatGPT is working with Booking.com, right? So let me just say this. This is the beginning of the end, Tommy. Is what I see this is for ChatGPT. So
I'm listening.
the reason I say that is because allowing you to open up apps inside ChatGPT is giving you the ability to tie existing monetary, like these are apps that have money. Like these are like other existing financial systems that are now going to start using ChatGPT to make their stuff better, which is great. I mean, totally acceptable. But like Booking.com, right? they're making money some way, and somehow ChatGPT is enhancing that, and now ChatGPT can make money or advertise using along those lines. Canva, right? Again, another program you pay for. Coursera, learning things. Expedia, another travel site. Figma, building design
Mhm.
websites. Spotify, like Zillow. These are big companies. A lot of them are geared maybe around search or providing services to you about these different apps. I think this is the way that ChatGPT is going to start trying to monetize on certain things. So does this mean like some of
Yeah.
your Spotify subscription goes to ChatGPT? Like where's the blend here? I guess what I'm trying to figure out is what is ChatGPT's ultimate monetization pattern here? And I don't see anything else other than ChatGPT has to start advertising at some form. Like they've got to figure out
Oh,
some kind of
geez.
monetization. Well, it's going to have to happen, right? People want the thing for free all the time. And where do you get the money from? You get it from ads. So how does that going to display out in a ChatGPT world, right? I don't this is where I'm trying to like struggle to figure out like how they're going to like eventually turn their business around.
They
It's
probably will never make money, just because of the cost of GPUs alone. And you know what's going to happen, Mike? It's going to happen
mm,
8 years from now when they don't have to be at this rapid rate of innovation. I was listening to something the other day, and they were saying when you look at the iPhone or the phone right now,
sure.
we've kind of made, optimized it,
It's
in
plateaued.
turn. Yeah, because you really can't do much more to a phone in terms of what it can do, the features, in terms of the size, the camera. So you're not going to see like in the beginning every year, like, oh my gosh, they added a camera here. What now? It's a retina display. And so there's always those rapid innovations, which cost a lot of money to do. And right now, I mean, who the heck knows Pandora's box of what that looks like for AI? But dude, I don't know if they're ever going to make money. But here's the thing: advertising. I'll bet you a steak on that. If Chat GPT starts doing advertising, I'll buy you a steak. I have no problem doing that.
Well, I don't think we need to take bets on this one. I think it's just inevitable that that's the direction they're going to go at some point. It's going to be some sort of shopping thing. It's going to be asking me for outfits. It's going to be some sort of integration that's going to start advertising things for you directly inside the application. And so ChatGPT is going to accelerate, not turnover. It's what's it called? Conversion rates, right?
Mhm.
Hey, if you use your normal website and search the internet, your conversion rate is what 3, 4, 5%, right? Use ChatGPT with your programmer app, and your conversion rate is 15 to 25%, right? All they're going to do is just give better recommendations, I think, at some level, and that's the reason I say this is interesting to me is because I think this is a direct competitor to what's happening in other spaces like Google or Microsoft or other spaces here that are already in the advertising space, Bing, I guess for that matter as well. I don't know how big the other players are in the space, but if
Right.
you look at that, I think that's where you're going to see a lot of competition, and I think it's also in the best interest of Google to supply all this AI information at the lowest cost possible. Gemini 3, I keep seeing people raving about it and just
Mhm. Oh yeah.
ripping ChatGPT apart just because it's like so much better, performing so much better. It's being given away for free. People are really liking it. It can do crazy 3D graphics and games and all kinds of other things that ChatGPT is not able to handle here. I don't know if you saw this, Tommy, or the article. I thought I heard or read an article that said Sam Altman, the president of ChatGPT, wrote kind of like a letter, a memo internally. Was like, "Hey, we got to really rally the horses here. People are passing us. We need to stay competitive. They have to reallocate resources to produce some stuff that they can get out the door." So
Mm.
I think ChatGPT is kind of under the fire here, and this is good. I think this is good for the market. It's good for competition.
Yeah, yeah. Gemini's update too is you can kind of create a web app that on the fly right now in an
Yep.
incredibly easy way. And like people are using that to do like their wedding invitations and for registering. So it actually like host something too, which is insane.
It's like but this is what I was talking about earlier. Remember months ago, Tommy, I said we're going to get to a place where you can just talk to it and you can just, it's going to be a throwaway thing. Like building an entire website from scratch by talking to it about a wedding invitation, that's a one time event. well, maybe 2 times event if you have if you have 2 marriages.
Yeah.
But typically it's a one big event thing, and here's a URL, give it to people, here you go. But after that, you're done. It's kind of like the event is over. You don't need those invitations to hang around on a website forever. So I think we're going to get a lot of these new experiences. We're going to start seeing new businesses pop up that you're going to build really rich, engaging experiences on the web, but it's going to be a one-time deal. Build it once and then get rid of it.
Dude, yeah, this is going to be awesome, dude. All right. Well, hey, I think we got a ton of things to cover already.
We do. Let me just quickly give the main topic, and then we'll go back to some news items. How about that, Tommy?
All right. That sounds perfect.
So today we've been talking about this thing called the ontology. This is something from Fabric IQ, and an ontology helps you visualize or put together different relationships between tables and data and objects and things that make your business work. So ontology is this new item in Fabric. You can go build it today. It's inside Fabric. You have to turn it on in the admin portal. So there's an admin setting that you have to toggle on for your organization. And then you can make a new item in the workspace called an ontology. So as I was playing with this ontology experience, Tommy, it seems very new. There's not a lot of buttons in it. It's pretty straightforward.
Yeah, it's pretty bare bones.
And one of the things that's not very clear to me, Tommy, and look at this ontology thing, is I don't understand how the ontology item works and where do you attach it to data agents? That's where I didn't quite understand. Like in the messaging of like the documentation, it seems like they're talking about it. I haven't quite figured out where to add it to the data agent. Maybe it's the ontology item is just added as a reference document to the data agent itself. I got to go look at that a little bit more. That's one thing I haven't quite figured out yet. But as I was thinking about this, when I came up with this idea, and I think we talked about this very briefly, Tommy, was this idea of the backwards ontology. That's going to be our main topic today. So we'll get into that in just a bit. Let's go into some news. Tommy, what did you find for news articles here?
All right, we got a few good ones, and one I really can't wait to get your thoughts on. So the first one is something new to Dataflow's Gen 2. From simple prompts to complex insights, AI expands the boundaries of data transformation. Again, I can guarantee you that title was made by AI. There's no question about that. But that's for another conversation. So what do we got here is we actually have here a AI powered automation for using natural language to do transformations on a new column. This is kind of crazy, at least the preview of it, because what it allows you to do is simply choose a column. And you know that feature in Power Query where it's like you create a column from examples.
Yes.
So that's just basically what you want the desired output to be. Same idea, but except instead of you providing what you want the desired result to be, you just put a natural query prompt in there and what you want to happen, which is kind of crazy if it worked. So it's really preview. And I looked through the limitation. It looks like it's not like a F6. It probably is going to be something like that, but I didn't see anything in terms of who is it available for. You do need to be using a Dataflow Gen 2 with CI/CD support. And besides that, it's not Copilot either. So this is completely separate of Copilot. Mike, the idea of this is amazing. However, they are opening Pandora's box, and I immediately tried a few tests yesterday.
Yep.
Everything aired out with the worst error message, just saying, "Look, we don't know what happened." So
it's in preview, right?
It's in like beta.
Yeah, it's like, in like beta, early
alpha.
preview, alpha A, right? Yeah, I mean, I don't. This is a neat feature, Tommy. I think it's good. People do want to kind of chit chat with their data and transform it in interesting ways. Is this a feature? It's rolling out slowly to all organizations. So this is something I do want to point out. Today is the day it should be out in all regions, but it may take some time to get there. Is this only in the service, or is this also in desktop? This
is just Dataflow's Gen 2 CI/CD.
So it has to be in the service. It's got to have to be the service-based things. Okay.
Right.
Yeah. I think this feels to me, I'm just giving my gut feel on this one. This feels to me we're just trying to throw AI at everything now for whatever reason, just to make sure it's there. Did the column by examples work for me? Actually, not too bad. I felt like the column by examples was actually a pretty good feature all of itself, and it did a good job of finding patterns and things, and it was pretty decent. I'm not sure why we needed to replace that with this other
Well,
Copilot
so
agent thing.
I would disagree in terms of if there's ever a easy use case for AI, it would be with the, hey, I don't have to only worry about certain patterns. I actually need to clean, the code here, or hey, help me find everyone's middle name, which is a lot harder to do with the column. I see what you're saying, but this is more to me that I would see have a logical place to put AI.
Yes, but I'm also I guess my argument here is why is that like most of the things that people are doing in Power Query, like what is this going to do above and beyond pattern searching? Like what is it going to do? And it's like that, and that's having just a button with AI that's there. Like what are we trying to get it to work on? Like is it again, if we're only focusing on just adding new columns? I feel like most of that's common stuff. I don't know. Maybe I'm underestimating what it can do. Um, it we'll see. I'm gonna
So,
play with it a bit more. I don't have a major
well,
opinion on it, but
yeah,
one thing I will admit to you, Tommy, whatever it is, doesn't matter. It's got to work. Like you can't have it just send out very random error messages. This is one of my cases of things that seems to be happening fairly frequently with Microsoft bringing out new features. A feature gets released, it's in preview, it's potentially too early, or the error messaging isn't very clear. Again, preview, great. We understand that it's not really baked yet. Okay. But those first 3 or 4 interactions you're going to have with a customer or user, if it doesn't work, people won't touch it again for 6 months.
oh
Long
yeah,
time. So, you've gotta have it at least do something. It's gotta at least work to some degree and attempt, even if it is wrong, it's gotta do something.
yeah.
So,
And,
I don't know. I
and
really feel discouraged when we see features come out and they just error out immediately.
the other thing I'm thinking about too, because the cool thing is you can go over multiple columns. So I think it's gonna be a lot more than just pattern. But does once you create the prompt and it generates, does it now have a certain like Power Query code that it's going to do every time, or does it evaluate for every row every time the thing refreshes? Right. So then your results could change every time your data is refreshed. Right.
What is
So, oh,
another question for you then around this then, to make sure I understand. When you use the AI column feature, right, does it just make M code or is it doing
mm-mm.
something else?
Nope. And there may be M code on the back end, but what you see in the Power
Advanced
Queries yeah, the
advanced
events
editor?
editor and the formula bar is you see prompt and columns that it goes over. It's not like the you select different examples where it would generate Power Query or you can see it.
Hmm.
It's just literally showing you a prompt but again, let's say you do something different and modify it, does then the results change because it's evaluating in a different way?
Hmm. Interesting. Yeah, that's gonna be a problem. I am not gonna
Yeah.
I am not gonna wanna run Power Query and have it load things and have it give me different results. Yeah, that's gonna be interesting. I don't know how that would work.
Now, if it was working at all, then I could tell you that experiment. However, yeah, we tried some very basic things on some very basic tool sets or data sets and still no go.
Hmm, interesting. Okay, well, let's see
All
how
right.
that turns out.
Yeah, so we'll keep update on that. But Mike, we got a few other things as well on the board. We
Yeah, let's go.
have
What else you got?
let's see. We'll do it in order. I think that makes sense. Fabric Runtime 2.0. This came out 3 days ago, and what this is simply looking at the now an experiment public preview, which simply is built for large scale data computations, which allows you to have a runtime that's Apache Spark 4, Azure Linux 3, Java 21, and Delta Lake 4.0. So it's really just about being able to go through and change your Spark settings and just try the newest and greatest things. So it is public preview.
Yep.
So experimental preview. So we're not even in just preview, Mike. We have to now say it's a preview that's also we're highly experimental.
I mean, this is what happens. I mean, Microsoft is usually behind the industry when it comes to like these other Spark related items, but this is the kind of stuff that they need to get to, right? Handling newer versions of Java, newer versions of Scala, Python, and Delta. This is great. I love this. This is exactly what they should be doing. This is a very expected thing. I'm very excited to try this out because I think this is going to be um, very useful for people. One of the things I observed when I work in Databricks, I do a lot of Databricks work as well, is in addition to Fabric. When you work in Databricks is constantly versioning themselves, and every time they have like major releases. So up until this point, we had like version 1.2, 1.3. This is a 2.0 version. This is like a major version that Microsoft is releasing. Typically, that means you're going to have like long-term support with the 2.0 version, whatever that means that they're building in there. Again, I don't know their backend very well, but these kind of movements, having these large development cycles, I guess I would call them, usually results in a lot better performance. Every time I've done this with Databricks, when they've made kind of like major revisions and done some really big things, stuff got faster, tables got more efficient. I was able to, use less compute but do more work. I'm very encouraged by this. This is something I want to see more frequently, is more versions of these different runtimes. Um, this is also one of the reasons why I've kind of gone down this route of try to use standard out of the box Python and Spark, right? So you
Mm.
don't want to do a bunch of like really crazy extra connectors and a lot of extra custom add-ins, because when you use custom wheels or bring your custom code packages into this Spark environment, you have to make sure that every new environment you put in place also works with the old packages. And this is something that I found that got burned on a couple times, which was we needed to connect to like a SQL server, and we had this custom package that Microsoft was maintaining. Well, then Microsoft said, look, we're no longer going to maintain it. And what that did is it stuck our Databricks environment into a certain version that would work with the package. If we went any newer, it wouldn't work. So we had to slightly shift our architecture so that we weren't doing, Spark. We didn't like Spark directly connecting to a SQL database. Instead, we liked Spark reading and writing data directly from the lakehouse. So there were some patterns that we changed based on not using custom wheels or custom packages inside Spark. So that's just one thing to be mindful of as you're updating these things. But I'm very encouraged by better runtimes and faster runtimes. I'm excited about
Yeah,
that.
as always, make sure you look at the limitations, Mike, because preview should always give you pause, but experimental, well, you can not install library. You can install libraries directly in your code. You can set the Spark settings. You can write to a lakehouse with Delta Lake 4.0, but
Yep.
V-order, native Parquet writing, those things are not supported. Features in data science are not supported, and integrations with VS Code are not supported as well.
That's a good call out, Tommy. There are some things here that you're getting by default. So, again, a lot of this is when you get to this stage. Let me say another thing that I'm kind of, as an engineer of this, right? This is where my mechanical engineering or my testing engineering hat comes on, right? This is a lot of, I have a pipeline, I have a notebook that's running right now on Python or Fabric runtime 1.3,
Mhm.
right? So that's something that's been running for a while. As soon as 2.0 shows up, I'm always interested in like, let's try that same notebook. Let's run the notebook again. What does the performance look like? And what you just called out there in some of the limitations, um, these features such as native Parquet writing, auto compaction,
Yeah.
optimized write, V order, these are features that may have existed before and just you weren't even aware of them, right? So having those things removed, you may find that there's different performance when this using experimental. So just be aware of that. You may need to run the experimental. You may need to wait for Microsoft to figure out these other features that they're trying to add in here, and make sure that V order and
And
auto
some of
compaction
those
is
are
taking place.
pretty integral to your existing notebooks or integration. So Mike, I'm really more and more, especially in the Fabric environment, I know it's hard to do, but preview features, especially things that are getting released, run it in a different sandbox because you can break things very easily. It's one thing to try and open source GitHub repo and create a virtual, like your own environment there to test things out. But like the V order is something that I know is a must. And if you have things that are production and you're like, you know what, I really got to try this on latest and breaking,
Yeah.
dude, you can really break things.
All right, let's get into our last news topic here, and we'll get
Yep.
into our main ontology portion here as well.
All right.
What's your last topic you want to look at?
So we're going to actually go to Gartner because we love Gartner and we love breaking it down. So Microsoft is recognized as a leader in the 2025 Gartner Magic Quadrant for data integration tools. So this is not your normal Power BI business intelligence one. I probably want to check the Power BI blog for that.
Yeah.
But Microsoft is, this is the first time I think Gartner has actually looked at Microsoft Fabric. I don't remember another Magic Quadrant, at least around the data integration. And they're up against AWS, Oracle, Informatica, Google, and still they're a visionary and a leader. So if you don't like Fabric, well, tough cookies because it's one of the best ones out there.
Yeah, so one of the ones that I think is where Microsoft is stomping on some existing playground is Informatica. I hear a lot about Informatica. It's quite big. I've also heard Informatica is quite expensive for data integration services of things. And to be honest, Tommy, I think there's a movement here. I think Microsoft is very much trying to provide a all-in-one software as a service portal, web portal, to build all these integrations across data pieces. I think this makes total sense. You have multiple different ways you can store data. You can bring in real-time data. You can store things in Lakehouse. You have Spark. You have SQL. It's like a Swiss Army knife of data stuff. And to be clear, a lot of this stuff existed inside Fabric, inside Azure before this. It just wasn't as integrated as it is now. And I feel like the integration now is just way better.
Yeah, I'm going to dive into the article because Gartner, what they always do too. Unlike, I remember we talked about one of the news articles. It was like not the Magic Quadrant, but it was like the circle, or whatever that weird measurement rating. They were like, I don't know how they're rating these products.
Mhm.
This one makes a lot more sense, and Gartner actually does a great job of breaking down why they kind of rated someone or measured someone a certain way. So they give like the pros and cons. So I'm intrigued what they're going to say with Fabric that it's doing so well, and compared to everyone else, like where it needs to catch up.
Yeah. I'm going to go to the art. So one thing I'll just call out here as well, for those who are making decisions around Fabric or not Fabric, right? The chat here was talking about is Fabric good enough to start replacing Databricks for your new projects? I maybe would argue if you don't have Databricks and you're deciding against Databricks and Power BI, it's a much better choice to start with Power BI and not introduce Databricks. But if you already have Databricks or trying to replace it, I don't think I'm there to replace Databricks yet at this point. But this being said, data integration is very much in line with this conversation. Are you doing data integration with Databricks? You can do it with just Fabric. And I think this article points out very clearly that Microsoft is in this space here. And I would highly recommend read through the article here and go to the Microsoft section and look at what they've got.
So I just got that up. So Mike, if you were to think of what a company like Gartner would look at as strengths for Fabric that's now been out for 2 years, I'm curious what you think it would be. But the strengths that they outlined is a broad data management vision, which I completely agree with. Microsoft's vision for Fabric as a converged data management platform is a key key distinction of it. Stable growth, they have strong market momentum, and then strong streaming capabilities. So while that just means more real-time updates by Microsoft, it features a dedicated module called real-time intelligence, and it is a way that's user-friendly as reported by Gartner clients.
I would argue here, Tommy, I definitely feel the messaging from Microsoft being streaming and real-time information becoming a very strong point for Microsoft. And I'll even note this, it's streaming and not in high volumes, lots of streaming data. I'm going to also argue around this idea of like event-driven actions, right? Being able to have information come in, a file lands, and then when the file lands inside the lakehouse, you can then detect an event and then process the data from there. So while we're saying streaming capabilities, I think the first thing many people go to is streaming is a high volume, lots of data points coming into Fabric, which it can handle, which that's part of what they're doing. But I also would argue it's also this real-time eventing based processing of data, which I think is making a very good waves here as well. So I would agree with these three strengths. I do see stable growth, but I will really lean on some of the precautions here. And the first one I think is also my message here as well, especially when we're talking like the difference between Databricks and Fabric. The product is still maturing. Microsoft Fabric and Microsoft Data Factory and Microsoft Fabric is a relatively new offering, even though it's built on pipelines previously from Azure. But they're still developing out continuous integration, continuous delivery. CI/CD is still being worked on. It's not quite fully fleshed out. It's not quite as smooth as you would like. And some companies like to use DBT in conjunction with Fabric. So yeah, it's getting better, but it's not probably as smooth as we would like.
Yeah.
The other one I will call here is they have limited on-premise capabilities, and this is clear. I don't think Microsoft's ever going to get top marks in on-premise capabilities with Fabric. Their whole goal is to move your data into the cloud. You don't want to have SQL servers on-prem anymore. You want to move that to an Azure SQL server or bring the SQL server directly to Fabric and have it work there. And then everything works a lot more seamless and a lot easier to work with.
Yeah, and I think Microsoft's looking at that going, okay, if you're going to point out our cons is on premise, fine. So we'll take that.
One of the other one here too. So Microsoft is in the upper right hand corner, which is a good sign. That means they're leading in vision and they have ability to execute. The other company that's out there that's just a little bit underneath of them on, shoot, I can't see the graph here. Let me go back here. The other one that's a little bit lower than them on ability to execute is Informatica. But for completeness of vision, Informatica wins, right? So they're higher on the completeness of vision there. And when you go back to the Gartner report and look specifically at Informatica, again, I hear about them. I don't directly work with a lot of Informatica products, but I do. When I hear things, this makes sense to me, right? Informatica is leading very strong in the AI and Gen AI capabilities. They're trying to bring a lot of LLMs there. This is an area that I think Microsoft is trying to get in more, but they've watered down AI by using this Copilot branding. And so instead of just directly integrating with models that exist that you can run, it's not as seamless to me. And so to me, this is an area that Microsoft should do better in the AI integration with existing items in Fabric. It doesn't need to be always whitewashed with this Copilot experience. Okay, fine, it's Copilot. But I get Copilot in VS Code and I can pick what model I want.
Right.
Like, why am I not able to pick models across the Microsoft AI things that they're doing? Like, I get it. Some of it they don't want you to, but anytime you're bringing a little chat window on the right-hand side open, like, let me pick what I want. So yeah. I think that's a very fair assessment there. And I'd also agree Informatica does seem to have a very broad integration system, a lot of partnerships, right? It kind of works with everything. It bolts on to anything you want. Microsoft, Databricks, Oracle, Snowflake, everything's there. AWS. You can integrate Informatica into all the systems, which makes sense. That's kind of what they're known for. So it'll be interesting to see where this is going to play and where Microsoft is going to continue to push themselves in this space. But it's encouraging to see. I like attaching my learning to products that are winning, right?
Yeah.
To me, Fabric is a winning product. It's growing. It's gaining adoption. It's getting high marks on Gartner. It's getting high marks with reporting. It's getting high marks in data engineering. I like that. I like being on that winning team side of things. So I feel very comfortable tying more of my career into the Fabric and data engineering space because I think Microsoft's doing a good job here.
I completely agree. All right, dude. A ton of good things going on. But speaking of new experimental and innovation, Mike, I think it's time we talk about ontology a little more.
Yeah, let's go into some of that stuff. I'm not sure where to really go from this one. Do we need to do like a little overview of what ontology is? I guess maybe that we should probably start there first.
Yeah. So our ontology, what is ontology? It's really Ontology, it's part of this new feature or product called Fabric IQ that was recently announced by Microsoft. And Ontology is simply a new item that can be created in the Fabric environment. And it's simply a business definition, or Fabric IQ Ontology simply creates a governed semantic layer with what's they're all reusable entity types, like customers and orders and the properties and the relationships that bind them together. So think closely to a normal semantic model. However, this is kind of that married with Microsoft Graph in terms of it's not just a technical, unique columns. It's simply the human understanding of how things are binded or related to one another, and also their definitions. Um, then it helps standardize business vocabulary for AI querying and Power BI consistency, where the ownership is, usually rests with the creator of that. And again, ontology background, the definition, we've said it a few times already on the podcast. From a philosophical point of view, it's simply what makes a thing a thing. Like what makes a chair a chair. It's the kind of the metaphysical. A more structured way of looking at it is simply how something can be, what are something's capabilities and how is it confined? What's its purpose, and in terms of really what is that definition of a thing. And that's more, we'll call it the business way of looking at the word ontology. So ontology is something I can create. I can use existing data. I can use a semantic model. But I think one of the things we said on a previous podcast, Mike, is consider our Power BI semantic models as a 2D painting that we've been doing, creating our Mona Lisas. What Fabric ontology is making that 3D. It's simply a third dimension, or another dimension to what a semantic model or semantic model does.
Yeah,
How's
I
that?
mean, yeah, I'm going to slow down here a little bit on ontology pieces, right? I think it's, when I look at the word ontology, it's basically just relationships between things. Is how I see it, right? You're already building an ontology inside your semantic model. And my mental model of this one is we have dimensions, we have factual tables, right? That's some level of an ontology. When I go into the model view, it's showing me the relationship between my data tables. When I think about this concept of ontology for my whole business, my mental model goes to, I could have 4 or 5 or 6 models that describe things about my sales team. So I have sales data, right? And inside those things, you can go even deeper and say, like, what kind of products do we sell? How often are things being sold? What are the sales channels? There's all this information that relates to that kind of that product area. So I think really what's the ontology piece here is, when you step back, we have a lot of knowledge in our head on how things relate together. This is a way of representing information for AI agents or things to help them bind themselves to different data elements that you're across your business. And so the example that Microsoft gives, I think, makes a lot of sense. It talks about like airplanes, airports, and customers. And so you step back and just say, how do these different objects relate? And I know in working with airlines, there's a lot of really rich data that comes from multiple things. For example, if we're just talking the airline example, we have on the plane, just the plane itself generates gigabytes of data every day, just sensors and maintenance records and all these other things. So the plane itself has a whole bunch of data points attached to the plane. Then people who are sitting in those seats, every person sitting in a seat has a whole bunch of data with them. When did they buy the ticket? Are they flying with their family? Is this a business or pleasure trip? Like all these different kind of other options here. And then you want to track, what did that user buy throughout the course of the trip? Are they always buying the premium seats? Are they always flying business class? What does that look like? And so to have a better picture of like knowing your customer and what they do, there's all these data points, and they all relate together, right? It's the whole idea of the business is these are related data points that link together at some level. And that's how I think about the ontology. I'm thinking about ontology as this is a way of describing relationships between your data. And so I'll just pause right there. What do you think, Tommy, about that? I don't hear you.
We're good. We're good. Not a technical thing, a Tommy thing. No, I agree with you. And I think we've definitely really, when you think about it, you kind of assume that something of this nature would be owned by, leadership and from business leaders or the leaders at an organization, right? Because
Why?
you're
Why do you
and
assume
then
that?
the initial assumption. Well, let me talk. Let me.
Okay.
I'm working on it. So the natural assumption to me would be, okay, if you are defining, for example, with the airplane example,
Sure.
well, if you're going to define those orders, I mean, those are things that just like leadership does define, usually what the targets are, who to hire. These are it's the core crux of that is making sure that we again have aligned definitions, aligned understanding of, in a sense, what things are. Where is gas something we're buying now or in the future, etc. So if you're going to have those definitions and how they're related to each other, you would assume that this would be something that would be coming from higher up, because that's going to, again, it trickles to every part of an organization. um does it and I But I think the question really is, because of how Microsoft works with data, does it demand, my question though is, as I think about it more, is, does ontology demand an executive or domain subject matter expert? Probably, because you have to again understand the entity and the relationship accuracy, making sure that we have a single definition for things. Like our example of leads can be different in marketing and sales, and ensuring that those definitions go across the business. But we have this new feature, Mike, in ontology where I can actually be in my semantic model, in the semantic model homepage, and
Yep.
there's a button that says create ontology from semantic model, auto
Yes.
create.
Yes.
Um, and this is pretty crazy because this really allows ontologies to be generated automatically. Understanding the tables are entity types, columns are properties, relationships, etc. Um, and at least enables teams to prototype and begin to scale upward. So my question for you, Mike, is how how successful do you think it could be? Because unlike I created a data set that just begins to grow with maturity, when you see ontology, do you see this as something that needs to be initiated by leadership, or is it something that, in a sense, you want anyone to take organically?
So let me go. I'm going to go to that question first, and then I'm going to maybe dive in a little bit more of like how do you build an ontology from a semantic model, because that's something I think a bit more interesting to me, and that's kind of more of where my idea comes from, like this idea of like the backwards ontology. So let me first address your question: who needs to own this stuff? We don't know yet, Tommy. It's all in preview. I don't think this has to be centrally managed. I don't think this has to be centrally led. Um, the way I see ontology working out right now, especially starting from the semantic level up, right? If you're starting at a single semantic model, that's a very narrowed window of data that you lives in or existing organization. Your organization is going to have thousands of semantic models at some point, right? Tons of models across the organization. The ontology part is just looking at one of those models. Very rarely do I recommend to a company to build out a monolithic semantic model that has every table, all the relationships, all the data into one large semantic model. A lot of times we work with customers and we talk about domain specific, right? What does this model need to have in it in order to service the reports for that model? And
Hmm.
an organization needs potentially multiple domains and even departments within a particular department, the finance department, the sales department, or the marketing department. They're probably going to need multiple semantic models to describe their entire domain of stuff. So even there, so I think of it as these models become like little data libraries. for what's happening with these organizations. So that being said, when I look at what ontology is doing, this is where the concept, I think, of the reverse ontology comes from, right? I have all these different semantic models. I've spent time building relationships between tables, but what I don't know is how many times have I used dim product? Is there product master? Where was that used across different semantic models or other systems? How similar is that table to, like, so for example, if I have a lakehouse table that's master products, how many other teams have used and consumed that? Have they taken that shortcut from that table and transformed the data and done something different with it? So there's some lineage there that goes with that table. And I feel like that's something that's part of the ontology, right? An ontology would describe, here's our master product data, and here is derivatives of that work that maybe be used in other semantic models. So when I look at ontology across the whole organization, maybe we have the product master table, but there may be multiple semantic models, multiple data tables that exist that support that. So this is kind of where I'm thinking from. Like, we're already spending time, we're already building these really rich integrations across our data layers, but they live in the semantic model. They're stuck there. And so what I'd like to see is in the ontology piece is like bringing more things of the ontology back up across multiple semantic models. That seems to make sense to me.
Multiple semantic models. Yeah. So, okay. Ooh, you're
Have
just
you-
at
so let
another
me-
layer there. Yeah.
So let me add just one note here as well. Have you gone through and have you done a reverse, we'll call it reverse ontology, right? I've made one ontology from scratch.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of difficult, to be honest.
It's not fun at all.
It's a lot of clicking. You have to add like every single detail. You can make the item basically like the object, right? This is country or whatever that is, but you have to add all these different like properties and bindings, and every column can become a property. And there's just a lot of extra things that can be added to the ontology graph here.
Yes.
Interesting, useful,
yeah.
but like I look at it going, oh my goodness, this is not like, yes, it adds some layer of capability here. But it's confusing in if you start from scratch, it's like, what are we doing here? It doesn't make sense to me. Does that make sense what I'm describing there?
100%. Because and to your point, Mike, when things are demo or preview, they are preview for Microsoft, because this is bare bones. Like you said, the whole, like that top ribbon, what is there? One button.
There's like three buttons, maybe. Yeah. When
Yeah,
you start
no,
from
that's if
scratch.
you click on something. If you click on something, you get two more buttons. And that's, that's about it. And in terms of creating that link between the relationships, there's really no, in a sense, if you don't know what you're doing or the purpose, kind of understanding there as well, because it's just kind of talking about those empty, like, yeah, it's kind of weird in terms of those bindings, how things are binded together, yada, yada, yada. But it's really hard to start. But at least when you're dealing with a semantic model, again, you already get the table. Everything's already, basic things like date, the name of the tables. You don't have to pick it would be excruciating almost, Mike, to start doing this from scratch. To your point, if let's say a team was like, hey, we're going to build our, ontology layer, and we're going to, do everything manual. That's a tedious effort. However, Mike, the thing is, I'm not sure, and to your point, there are multiple scenarios here where a single semantic model is not going to cover what an ontology layer would need to, right? Because again, the purpose of a semantic model, right, is from the business logic definitions for a reporting solution. It's not going to necessarily cover or filter, include everything. But ontology, well, you're going to kind of want more or less everything about the anything that has to related to do with a plane. You're going to want that graph, those binding, those links from vendors, etc., things that you would not normally need in a semantic model. And that's where I think there's an additional layer of complexity. But I don't want to get too ahead of ourselves, because let's just take what we got today and just that, hey, how can I get started type of attitude. Does the semantic model feature, and right now I think it's that or bust personally. Um, like, is that a Kickstarter for you for organizations or for teams to go, let's just try this out? Or is that just a neat to have cool feature? Where does that kind of align for you, what you're seeing so far?
My initial impression is if you start from ontology, the item itself verbatim, just the way it is, without any starting, it's confusing. I don't know what it's there for. You don't really understand like how the relationships work. How do you add relationships here? When things start making sense to me is when I start seeing it using the semantic model to build out the ontology. There's like some scripting that Microsoft's got behind the scenes here, where they are using like the relationships in the semantic model are bound to the relationships inside the ontology, right? So, for example, I have a very simple star diagram. It's a star model. I understand what star diagrams are doing. You have a fact table and you have a handful of dimensions that filter the singular fact table. And in this example, when I load this semantic model directly into the ontology, it says, oh, here's my fact table, fact sales. From the fact table, the fact table has dimensions. Here's the relationship to the dimension. Here's the relationship to the dimension for date. Here's the relationship for the dimension to dimension for segments. And when I look at this in my fact table, I have a handful of measures. So each measure becomes a property of the fact table. Makes sense. That's kind of what I would initially have viewed inside the Power BI semantic model. But there's this other thing called bindings, and I don't really understand where that fits. What's the purpose of it? How does a binding get data in? So it looks like bindings are trying to attach an actual data source to bind factual data from like a lakehouse or some other source to bind things. There's also this idea of a entity key type or an instance display name. So there's always other extra things that are in here that I wish it was a little bit more useful. One other thing that's a bit of a complaint here for myself is when you're creating this entity inside the ontology, the name of everything here has to have underscores in it. Even though my semantic model has a proper name for the measure, sum of sales with spaces in it, for whatever reason, the ontology thing makes you have underscores. Okay, I mean, I get it, but like, the reason of having an ontology is to make it human readable. Like,
yeah,
the reason it exists is to make it understandable to individuals that are looking at this and exploring the graph of this. So why are we forcing ourselves to have something with no spaces in the properties of these different objects? It seems like self-defeating. So yeah, okay, fine. You need to have something, the item may need to be named sum of sales with underscores, but there needs to be like a pretty name of it. Like what is
the
the
display
actual
name.
The display name. Where's the description, right? These are things that are already inside this that should exist there, right? If I've made, again, going back to this, like I'm already adding metadata into the semantic model. This has been, I think, Tommy, our guidance for a number of years now has been the documentation of the semantic model is the semantic model. That's why there's description columns. That's why there are relationships. Describe the data that you're producing and how those tables got there. Because when you go back to it and you use it in One Lake Catalog, when you go look at it in the report building side, that business logic appears when you hover columns and measures. It makes sense. So, anyways, I think we're a little too early of this, Tommy. I still don't understand why I'm trying to use it. That's maybe a something I don't really grasp yet. And this is where I think the backwards ontology thing makes sense to me because I'm already looking at hundreds of semantic models across my organization. We've already figured this logic out. We know what works. We've built some reports that are actionable. So on the items that we build across our Power BI ecosystem, let's pick the best ones. Let's smush them all together. Let's bring them all to the ontology. And like that, to me, that feels like, hey, I shouldn't have to be creating an ontology or maybe there's a feature that should exist here. Maybe I should go into the ontology piece and say, select these semantic models and load them in. And then once each model has been made and part of the ontology, I can then start relating and merging different elements together and say, oh, actually, these two tables are the same thing. So we have to your point, Tommy, earlier in the conversation, you're talking about like these, like there's like specific details which is like the actual name of the fact table, fact sales. And then there's higher level objects, which is sales data, right? Let me see if I can come up with a better name of this one. I'm trying to look at one of my semantic models here. We have products, right? So products may have multiple tables that describe them, potentially. You might have a product table that describes what is the product right now. It's a fact.
Right.
It's a dimension table that is the current record, the current values of that item exist right now. You may have a second product table that has slowly changing dimensions in that table. So what was the product description over time? Every single description that you've ever edited to. What was did the product change in dimension or weight, or did you change something on the product? It's still the same product, but features of the product are changing. So when I look at this ontology piece and I look across my organization at the base level, we may be describing products different ways. And you remember, Tommy, we always kind of beat heads about this one around like who defines these things?
Yeah,
Who defines
exactly.
what something is named? I think another one that we argue about a lot is client. This is one that's, who is the client? What is the customer? How do we define that, right? I think the ontology has the ability for us to take two different semantic models and say, here's how Tommy defines client. And that
Ooh,
there's an overarching object called customer or client. But now I can have 2 or 3 tables inside this ontology that describe, okay, here's how sales looks at customer. Here's how, finance looks at customer. They might have slightly different definitions, but we're still saying the word customer. To your point here, this is where we at least can put those 2 tables of information under the same umbrella, and now we can have a conversation. Right? Now we can add descriptions and information and metadata about it that describe what does customer mean to these different business departments. And then I think at that point, now you can have the conversation that says, do we actually need to align on definition? Is it okay to have 2 definitions? And you might be okay with that. That's a business decision you'd have to make.
So I think the hard thing for us right now, Mike, is there is so new that it's not like outside of the technical barriers here is like, to your point, the binding and like the purpose of it, right? I like, to me, I feel like if I was bringing this to leadership saying, hey, we're gonna build this ontology and it's going to be our definitions around all of our information in the organization, and there I have to start asking them questions that to relate it back to the the technical structure of this, they're going to start getting really overwhelmed. Because let's say, like, just if you were to say it's not, what this is not is simply a glossary, and I think that's the misconception here, because it may have some parts of that, right? But then there's okay, the binding, like what data is it something binded to? I can add data to an entity type. First off, I'm not sure why I would need to, in terms of if I already have a source data. And then I think the biggest thing is like all the things that you need to define in order to get one entity created. This is where, but more importantly, like what's the point? Like what's the purpose of it, right, Mike? Like, so even if you do create an entity type and you have it for dim product, and you have the main data, the source data is coming from, and you bind other data to it, great.
Sure.
Okay, now what do you do with your ontology, right? Like, does it what does this now affect in the business that we've established, different definitions, etc. And I think seeing that output is going to help basically how we structure and define this too, because this is something I would not bring right now to leadership and doing like a workshop, because that is just going to, I think, confuse the heck out of people, because I don't even know what the entity type is for,
I mean, I think when you go through like the dialogue box here and then you try and figure this out, right? So semantic model has tables and relationships, but you bind like real data. When you go to the binding exercise, it pushes you directly to the lake house And inside the lakehouse, it's going to automatically allow you to select a binding type of static or time series. And then you basically pick a table. And the table says, here's the columns, here's the property name on each of those items. And you can preview some of the data if you want to see it, and you hit save. So it takes a semantic model and basically goes back to the lakehouse and says, here's the lakehouse table you can bind this data to.
Bless you.
I had to sneeze. So when I look at this, I'm going like, okay, this is interesting. I can see some of the data bindings here. But again, I think this is a play for Microsoft to start adventuring into data governance, right? I think this is an early play into like, what does data governance look like? Back to our point earlier, Tommy. We've been touching around this topic for a while now, which is like, hey, let's define customer. Let's pull in multiple items. What does customer look like to us? How do we define that? Where does this data live? When we say the word customer, which lakehouse? Which lakehouses is it in? Right? I can bind a lakehouse, a specific table to one of these things called customer, but I could bind other things. I can have multiple definitions for that same stuff. Does that make sense what I'm describing there?
Yeah, no, it totally does. And I think once you have those definitions, again, it's going to be that the data agents. Mike, as you're talking, I'm going through configuring a data binding, and it's interesting. I don't know if you did that as well, create it manually, but if you took
I've
one of your,
tried both. I've tried manually. I don't find much value from it because I have to define every little thing about what's going on. I liked having at least a semantic model to start from because I again, let me go back to my mental model here. My mental model was I understand what a semantic model is. I understand the relationships, the tables, and the measures, how all that stuff binds together. It was a good, because I'm starting from a reference point of understanding and then going to the ontology and say, oh, I see what it's doing. Relationships are reflected this way. Tables are reflected this way. Measures are reflected like this. Okay, interesting. So that I think is useful to me from just a mental standpoint. But to your point, Tommy, I also have done the start from scratch, and you can build anything you want.
it's funny though too, because one of the things I try to do, I needed a time series, and that's the binding types of time series. I'm like, wait, what? Why? Like, so, and this is where it gets interesting, where I think a lot of this is, yeah, right now I'm kind of leaning with the semantic model. It's a great starting point,
Sure.
but and honestly, I would recommend right now for anyone, I would start with the semantic model, because that's your best business, mapping of metadata in your organization for certain data. Especially compared to the manual creation here. Uh, and this kind of then by default kind of answers that question of we are going to be creating these definitions from the ground up right now, unless the tool changes drastically. And, we have the better purpose of those entity types and the links. And then like that purpose of it, I think what we're going to be seeing is a ton of semantic model ontologies created, and they're going to be less than perfect. You know what I mean? Because they're not going to have everything that you are going to need, but it's the starting point. Now it is great that I can use the semantic model as a starting point, and I can bind data to it from lake houses, anything in Fabric. That's just part of the beauty of Fabric.
Okay.
But again, Mike, I need to see the output here. I need to see the for what side of this, right? I'm going to create this semantic model. And I think for people, they may test it out, but what do you do with this is going to dictate, I think, what we create in it. And that's kind of where I'm leaning here. And I'll say it again, what this is going to do, so what the output of this is, what this feature or, enhancement or how it's actually making an impact is going to dictate how extensive ontologies are being created and how much governance they have.
I think you're right on this one, Tommy. I think the idea here is we don't have a good framework. I'm not sure if the documentation illuminates to me a clear purpose as to what the ontology is there for. Like, I understand. I like the idea that it's building like this graph thing. It's trying to build relationships between stuff, right? is let me project some things here based on what I see so far, right? I have this mapping of how things relate together. I can add relationships between tables and fact tables and dimensions, right? We can have that exist. I can bind data to specific areas. This is something that I think Purview was trying to accomplish, which is let me scan your system and show you all the things that you have. And then you can add relationships between different tables and data and where does it exist and mapping it out, right? So this is basically a way of mentally mapping your organization and specifying across semantic models, lake houses, data warehouses, right? Where do all these tables exist, right? It's a mess right now. How do I link this stuff together? So I
Mhm.
see the ontology as being somewhat kind of this glue of how we start documenting what we build. Now, great. Interesting point. Where does this start at, like my question to you would be is why does this add value? Why would I do this other than having a pretty graph that I could explore and click on different tables to see what's there? I, I'm not sure the lemon is not worth the squeeze for me at this moment to go in and say let's spend a ton of time building out ontologies for my organization because I've got to figure out what does this saving me time in doing? Is
Right.
is it saving me time in like discovery? Is it saving me time in like data quality? So I fully feel like, and this is maybe something I could maybe go in here, but if as I'm using this experience, I feel like I would have data rules or data something constraints on top of this data. Hey, I'm going to bring in this sales table. Uh, what's the count of records today? Okay, every day I wanted to go count the number of records tomorrow. Okay, that starts adding value to me. Now I'm starting to watch data drift over time. Hey, I'm going to build this sales table, and this column is the primary key. It should never be blank. Or this data in this column should have this kind of criteria, right? So there's like business rules I think I would apply to this. And so if we're talking like proper data governance, I think a value for me, and this may be where this is trying to go. Maybe it's going to get there eventually, but I'm not sure yet. But to me, adding like constraints against this data, adding rules about this data on top of this ontology piece
Mhm.
makes a lot more sense to me because now I can say, okay, let's get a holistic view of my organization data. Let's have data quality scores on top of all this stuff. Like that makes sense to me, right? Here's all of the sales data that we have contained in our sales tables. We have 3 tables. We've got some lake houses. Here's all the data. These are the rules that we've applied. Here's the data quality scores for all that stuff. Like, I need a holistic view of my company and the data
Mhm.
that we have everywhere. And I need scores and percentages. And is it valuable? Is it not valuable? How many people are using this? How many times has this data source been accessed in the last month? Are there usage metrics that we tie to this stuff? To me, this ontology thing, I think, gets much more powerful when we're able to add extra metadata to it that enhances like the quality and the usage or discoverability of our data. Now, maybe that's where Microsoft is going. I may be projecting a bit too much here in the ontology space, but to me, that's what's going to add real value. And that's when I can start putting working on building this and pushing out to my organization. Right now, I don't really see a lot of value at the initial stage other than making a pretty graph and for some very lightweight discoverability. And even that, I think, is like minimal at best. Does that make sense what I'm describing there,
No,
Tommy?
no, 100%. Because if the purpose of this right now is you create an ontology to create a data agent, well, how much better of an experience is that data agent with an ontology layer source rather than a semantic model or
Again,
a lake house?
you're projecting as well, and I like this, right? Where do we attach this? Like, can you go to like the other question I'd have for you, Tommy, is if we make a data agent inside a workspace that has an ontology in it,
Mhm.
are you able to add the ontology to the data
Yeah,
agent?
that's kind of the main purpose. From what I'm reading, that's kind of the primary reason an ontology exists. Is you can do like one of 3 things with an ontology. You can connect it to a data agent. You can use it in Microsoft Graph to query, and you can use it with an operations agent in real time. And those are the 3 things right now that an ontology, in a sense, is a engine for or fuel for. So, but the big one is the data agent, which again if I already have a semantic model with definitions, why would I need to create a ontology layer? Like, how much better is that data agent going to be using ontology? Because I can do with the data agent the same queries, right? So that other side of it again is the Microsoft Graph, but I don't know where in the organization you're going to be doing that.
Tommy, have you loaded an ontology into the data agent yet?
No, why?
It looks horrible. There's
Really?
definitely there's a major bug. So if you go, so while you were saying that, Tommy, I went back to my Microsoft Workspace. I have a number of ontologies. I made a star model ontology, and I pulled that ontology directly into my data agent. And oh my word, it's a mess. The icons are all over the place. I have a major bug by pulling in
Oh,
an
really?
ontology into the. So we are in really early stages here. And maybe this is where it's going to go. Like maybe the ontology is helping you describe data to make it better for your AI agent to go find data sources and relationships and reports and things. It's traversing that knowledge graph of like what's inside your business. But dude, man, it's rough right now. It's definitely yeah, it's really difficult to use at this point. So we're definitely not there yet. It feels like we're very far away from effectively using ontologies at this point. But I think I'm
Jeez.
starting to get the concept about it. This is a weird concept. There's a lot of weird things going on here, Tommy.
That's encouraging. Gosh, that's frustrating. Microsoft, if you had to wait 6 months to get this released, I'm okay with that. I really am.
Well, I guarantee you it was come on everyone, we need to get this out the door for Ignite or whatever whatever the next big conference was, and so we rushed some things out the door to get it done. So, yeah, it's definitely quite buggy. Definitely not digging the experience so far. It needs a lot more work here to get this to work better. Anyways, okay. I think we've kind of beat up this whole ontology. I think the idea of the backwards ontology does make sense. I think we need to go from more semantic models and get more elements into the ontology. We'll see how well Microsoft can make that easy to integrate and easy to pull data in. I still feel like the story is not, I don't understand the story yet. From what I read the docs, from what I read, it doesn't quite fit for me yet. I need more vision for where Microsoft's going with this. Anyways,
Dude, I completely agree.
that being said, thank you all for listening. Us ramble about more ontology pieces and your organization, where data lives. These things might be useful to you. I'd give it a couple months. Hold off on the ontology pieces. We are early testing these things. Maybe give it a couple months here to refine a little bit and add some features here and fix a couple things here because it's a bit rough around the edges right now. So I would say. That being said, thank you all very much for listening to the podcast. We do appreciate you. Topics and information you guys give us is a wonderful and super valuable. So make sure that you let us know what you'd like to discuss in the comments of this video right now. Let us know. Are you experimenting with ontology? What do you see it being useful for? Where would you want to see ontology being value added in your business? Does this even make sense? I don't know. Let's unpack this together. We're really unpacking like what does this mean, and is this something that we will find to be fundamental as we build things in the future? That being said, Tommy, where else can you find the podcast?
You can find us on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to subscribe and leave a rating. It helps us out a ton. Do you have a question, idea, or topic that you want us to talk about in a future episode? Head over to powerbi.tips/podcast. Leave your name and a great question. And finally, join us live every Tuesday and Thursday, 7:30 a.m. Central on all of PowerBI.Tips social media channels.
Thank you all so much for participating. We really appreciate your ears today. Have a wonderful week, and we'll see you next time.